It is the dawn of a new day in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The nuclear option has been hit as Mike Tomlin has officially stepped down as Steelers head coach, but that's old news at this point. You already know that. But fortunately, there's plenty of other things to discuss in the fallout, in the wake of Mike Tomlin stepping down. And here to join me in this discussion is Jacob Punturi. You know him as a writer for Steelers on SI, the co-host of All Steelers Talk, or you might just know him as a quippy guy on Twitter at Jake Atsby _Atsby, mind you. Jake, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks, buddy. Happy to be chatting with you. I mean, the biggest compliment here, quippy on X. That's the biggest compliment I could be paid. So thank you so much. Happy to be chatting after what has been a crazy 48 hours in Pittsburgh regarding the head coaching situation. So happy to be chatting.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the nuclear option because it had been 19 seasons with Mike Tomlin at the helm of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And honestly, it felt as if it could have gone to 30 because it doesn't feel like the organization was anywhere close to being done with Mike Tomlin. But it turns out Mike Tomlin is done with the Steelers organization. I mean, that might be a little bit more harsh than the actual situation, but 19 seasons, 1 Super Bowl win, 2 Super Bowl appearances. But on the other end of it, 9 years without a playoff victory and 7 straight losses in the NFL playoffs, followed up by, not followed up, but ended by what we saw on Monday night against Houston. What were your initial reactions when the news came down at about, 2:05 on Monday morning, a time that we're now all going to remember?
It was, yeah, you can't forget where you were when that infamous moment dropped. It was shocking. Something that we talked about a bunch on the All Steelers podcast was the Pittsburgh Steelers will not fire Mike Tomlin, right? We heard the fire Tomlin chants. We saw the discontent from the fan base growing at times. But through thick and thin, the organization stood behind Mike Tomlin and they were continuing. They were planning to do so. Owner Art Rooney said that he was expecting their conversation to be, let's start talking about 2026 whenever Mike Tomlin walked into his office and told him, you know what, I'm stepping down after 19 seasons. So it is quite a shocking moment. We did not expect it, but as soon as it happened, my next thought after the shock was, I think this was a needed move. I think this was a necessary move. I've been a staunch defender of Mike Tomlin. I'm a Pittsburgh kid. I have fond memories watching Mike Tomlin take this team to a Super Bowl, going through the ups and downs as a fan, covering the team. I love Mike Tomlin. I'm sad to see this man go. It's been an overdue thing, long time coming. This organization needs to move forward and they need to identify that next CEO to take them into that next level.
Yeah, as somebody who, echoes your sentiment, growing up in Western Pennsylvania, Mike Tomlin was the bulk majority of my lifetime watching the Pittsburgh Steelers. And anybody who says that he's not a great coach is just somebody that's being a hater for the reasons of being a hater. He is a great coach, but even great coaches sometimes reach an expiration date. I mean, I'm sure we all had the similar conversation with Mike Sullivan just under a year ago. I'm sure Patriots fans had a similar conversation about Bill Belichick 2 years ago. So sometimes a fresh start is needed, and that's exactly what the Steelers are getting at the head coach position for the first time in 19 seasons. So while it's a fresh start for them, what about some of these other guys within the organization? I mean, I think it's safe to say Aaron Rodgers is a player that came to Pittsburgh specifically to play under Mike Tomlin, and with the fact that he's 42 years old, doesn't feel like he's on his way back to Pittsburgh. So that's another question mark for the Steelers looking for a quarterback. But outside of him, I mean, Arthur Smith still has time left on his contract, albeit he is being eyed by the Tennessee Titans and Arizona Cardinals right now for their head coaching vacancies. But I think more importantly, guys that you look at and you say maybe their short-term and long-term future is up in the air with this organization. Would Cam Hayward want to retire? Would TJ Watt end up seriously being considered as a trade target? I mean, I'll lay that at your feet with those two specifically. Do you see a future that is not in black and gold for either of those two in 2026?
I hate to say it, but I do. I'll add the third one in there with Aaron Rodgers. I think Mike Tomlin exiting the team immediately writes off any chances of him returning, and I think Art Rooney pretty much confirmed that again today in his recent press conference. Cam Hayward, listen, there he and TJ Watt are in the same boat of a playoff a long playoff run eludes Cam Hayward at this point. A playoff victory eludes TJ Watt at this point. There's a lot still to be played for, and the passion is, still very much there. But do they want to undergo an entire system and operational change from top to bottom with this new head coach that comes with likely new coordinators on both sides of the ball, a whole new staff? You hope there's some holdovers, but it's not going to be much. They're going to leave that very much under the purview of the head coach. So, to make a long answer shorter here, there's a chance Cam Hayward much greater than TJ Watt, but there certainly is a chance that both of these players do not wear the black and gold next year. And I think if Hayward's not, he's probably retiring. I can't see him being anything other than a one helmet player. But with $41 million per season going to TJ Watt still, there are serious question marks. And if the head coach doesn't see him as being a part of whatever vision on the defense there is, you might make a tough call regarding TJ Watt.
Yeah, and the thing with TJ Watt is what direction does this organization want to go in? I know Art Rooney, in the most Art Rooney way possible, says, I don't like that word. Whenever somebody brought up rebuild to him today, I thought he was about to vomit on stage. Whenever I saw that was asked of him, is this the beginning of a rebuild? I was like, oh boy, that is the hot button word for Art. I mean, the hair on the back of his neck was probably standing up, but there is serious consideration that even if you're trying to go out there and make the playoffs and be a contender next year, that trading TJ Watt might now be, a serious thing to consider, especially with the emergence of Nick Herbig, as well as he played this year whenever the injuries occurred to both TJ Watt and to Alex Highsmith. And honestly, Jack Sawyer made an impact play on Monday Night Football. I think you'd be fooling yourself if you didn't sit there and say, I'd like to see a little bit more out of Jack Sawyer in 2026. So it's going to be something to follow along with all offseason long. I think Cam Hayward's somebody who is slow to act. He doesn't want to make a rash decision. So I think he'll wait to see who's hired, and he'll wait to have an opportunity to have a conversation with just the head coach and the eventual new defensive coordinator. And I think that's when you'll see something come from him. But I think Hayward is of vital importance here, because while you do have guys on the defensive front that could help kind of fill the void of Cam Hayward, I think there still needs to be some maturation in guys like Derek Harmon, in Y.A. Black, even in Keanu Benton, who's going into his fourth year, I think could still use a little bit more tutelage from a guy like Cam Hayward. And I think the Steelers, while taking steps when it comes to stopping the run this year, I still think that they would take too many steps backward losing Cam Hayward than they would if they would be able to retain him and at least get one more year out of him before he's able to call it quits and just kind of float off into what is bound to be a very prosperous media career.
Succinctly put, for sure. Cam Hayward is still a premier defensive tackle in the NFL. So if he wants to come back, if he wants to give this another go, the Steelers would be benefiting from having him back. I just think the biggest question here is, will they give the head coach free reign in terms of the defensive system, and will that align with what Art Rooney and ownership want in their next head coach? Will the sacred 3-4 base defense maybe transition to a 4-3 to match a lot of what the modern NFL is playing? I mean, I don't know. I don't know where exactly these things align and intersect, but I think regardless, Cam Hayward remains a vital piece of this defensive line. I don't know if he wants to give it another go with a brand new staff, even with, any holdovers and teammates still there in 2026 when that kickoff begins.
Speaking for myself, Cam, if you're listening, which I know you're not, I want you back. And I think Jacob wants you back too. I think we all want a little bit more Cam Hayward in our lives going into 2026. But you mentioned whoever that new head coach is. I want to get a quick look here at some of the early candidates. We've seen a couple names come across the major insiders' Twitter feeds. Brian Flores, Vikings defensive coordinator. Nate Scheelhaas, Rams pass coordinator. Chris Shula, Rams defensive coordinator. And Jesse Minter, the Chargers DC. Oh, almost forgot. Anthony Weaver, Dolphins DC as well. Very defense coded, but I don't think any of us are surprised that these are the first 5 names that have been announced as been asked to be interviewed by the Steelers?
Not not surprised at all. I mean, this is, they have a type, and it's not like there is a large sample size to draw from with 3 coaches since 1969,
Yeah.
but they love a young rising defensive coordinator, and they just so happened to hire the Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator once before in 2007. Worked out kind of well. I was not surprised by any of this, and I think in this 5, Chris Shula is a guy that stands out kind of head and shoulders for me. We've been talking about this a lot uh, as well. Brian Flores, I think, is the most popular candidate. He seems to be the front runner because of that experience he has with the organization as a defensive assistant in 2022. I love what he's done with the Minnesota Vikings. I do consider him a schematic guru of sorts on the defensive side of the ball. That being said, Chris Shula looks like a slam dunk to me of those 5. He also seems to be one of the hottest tickets of those 5. I am curious though, with these next, I'm anticipating, 5, 10 more
Mhm.
requests to interviews to come out here in the next couple of days. How many more offensive minds can we get? And written about this on Steelers on SI about some candidates that I think are top notch, and to be, maybe it's my own bias, maybe it's trying to reverse the trend from Mike Tomlin and 19 years of that, really tailored to and oriented around offensive minds. So I'm curious to see how many more of those types of coaches, offensive coordinators, are a part of that next mix of coaches that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to pursue.
Yeah, it's really funny because the last time the Steelers were looking for a coach, it was an offensive coordinator position. They eventually ended up hiring one Arthur Smith, but at that time I was the co-host of All Steelers Talk, and the name that Noah Strackbine loved was Clint Kubiak, and it sounds like, based on the conversations I've heard of you guys over on that show, it's Clint Kubiak is a name that you've both certainly circled as somebody that hopefully the Steelers are going to go out there get. And also, I heard you like somebody named Jim Bob Cooter in Indianapolis for certain reasons.
I I'm so glad you mentioned him because yeah, I mean, listen, I will get to Clint Kubiak in a second, but Jim Bob Cooter, I think, has maybe the best, no, scratch that, the best name in all of the NFL. And if real um attributes to enter into this conversation, as well as he has tons of game calling experience. He's been an offensive coordinator at multiple organizations, has over 10 years of NFL coaching experience, but he's still in his 40s. It's a guy who comes with a lot of experience and the best name in the NFL. The way the things ended with the Indianapolis Colts in the second half of the season, I think really put a damper on any of their coordinators getting a real look in this coaching cycle. But I started to get some feelers picking up on some things regarding Jim Bob Cooter maybe a month or two ago. I think things have fizzled out, but I'll always keep him on the back burner, and I hope and pray that he gets an interview. Clint Kubiak, talk about another slam dunk front runner. I think he and Chris Shula really stand out as the 2 guys that are the most coveted in this entire NFL head coaching cycle. And we're talking about 9 organizations searching for their next head coach. And wow, there are different needs, different, guys like Arthur Smith drawing attention, as you mentioned, from, places like Arizona and Tennessee. Clint Kubiak has shown that he can take an offense with not the best pieces, make a guy like Sam Darnold look like an all-pro quarterback, and make the Seattle Seahawks offense looking like an incredible Super Bowl frontrunner. It's impressive work. I think he's going to be one of the next people named to be interviewing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if the Steelers were smart, they would take a very, very long look and long think about him as their next head coach as well.
Yeah, like you mentioned, there might be another 10, maybe even over a dozen names that get thrown out there as being either asked to interview or interviewed or thought of by the Steelers front office. But it's going to be a very quick process, I would imagine. Like they're going to do their due diligence, but we're not going to get into past the Super Bowl and there still not be a head coach named to the Pittsburgh Steelers because there's a lot of work to be done between now and the NFL draft in Pittsburgh just under 100 days away. But we've talked a lot about how this affects the Steelers. Let's quickly touch on what's next for Mike Tomlin. I mean, this guy has been ingrained in the fabric of one city for nearly 2 decades. So it seems like there's 3 paths for Mike Tomlin. I guess 4 if you include just sitting on his couch for a year, but I don't find him being a guy that can just say, "You know what? Let me just watch TV. Let me just chill." So speaking of TV, a lot of people have talked about him potentially going into television. I'm not sure how much credence I would give it unless, he gets a spot right next to his buddy Jay Glazer on Fox. But a lot of people expect him to maybe go for another NFL head coaching job. The Steelers do have his rights, so it would have to be a trade if that were to happen. Or let me just ask you this. Do you think now there might be a booster with a big enough blank check to get his attention?
I I think anything is possible, right? I did not think it was a likely situation that Mike Tomlin would depart after his 19th season with the Steelers.
Mhm.
At this point, anything is possible. I really struggle to see him in an NCAA program. I think the transfer portal would just absolutely enrage him start to finish. And I mean, from an entertainment perspective, from someone, getting to write and talk about it, I would love to see it. I could only imagine how frustrating and how frustrated Mike Tomlin would be being the head coach of, USC as he was rumored to be interested in being all those years ago.
Mhm.
It's a no. It's a no for me, dog. But man, boosters keep trying. How about the University of Pittsburgh? Let's raise enough funds. Okay.
I mean, the University of Pittsburgh right now is rolling with one of the most tenured coaches in the entire city limits.
It's
I mean,
true.
Pat Narduzzi feels like he is a mainstay and been from archaic times compared to, the Pirates, the Penguins, now the Steelers. I mean, it's wild the amount of turnover at that position that we've gotten across the board in Pittsburgh sports. But to close this out, I mean, I'm interested in where Tomlin goes. I think he ends up getting another NFL head coaching job. I think one of these teams is going to have enough to offer him to where he's going to say, okay, and now it wasn't 5 minutes like everybody speculated upon for the last decade if he left Pittsburgh. But, I do think another team is going to come calling. And I do think the Steelers are going to do some business there if there's business to be done. It feels like that's something that will happen. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
absolutely. Oh, yeah, thank you. No, 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 sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, you're fine.
My bold claim on all of this is he does take another NFL head coaching job, but I don't think it happens until after the 2027 season ends because I don't think he or the Steelers want to deal with any of this compensation for his coaching rights, any of that situation. I think we see a hiatus for Mike Tomlin until the 2027 season ends.
Wow. I mean, I will be interested to see. It'll be fun to watch and really figure out what his next steps are going to be and how he does, because we all imagine that whatever team he's going to go to, he's going to find success. We started this entire
Definitely.
conversation saying that he is a very good head coach. It just reached its expiration date in Pittsburgh. So I'm intrigued to see how he does at his next stop and how the Tomlin way translates to a different organization because it's something we haven't seen before. But I do want to close it out with this. What was your favorite Tomlinism? If you can pick one. I mean, if you need to do a top 3, that's fine, but to me, I think the best one that I'll go back to a lot and it just makes me giggle is there's a fine line between drinking wine and squashing grapes in this business. And I just that one, when he said it, I was just like, I mean, it makes sense, but man, how did you get there? How did you get to squashing grapes, Mike T?
I have this vision of Mike T just driving into the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex for practice, and during that 20-minute drive or whatever it is, he's sitting there going, "I'm gonna come up with 10," kind of like someone, like Mad Men when they're doing all of those 100 pitches. You got to
Mhm.
just come up with the best lines and Tomlinisms, and he just has a Rolodex as he goes through them. My favorite one is certainly that one. I could give you all the ingredients to the hot dog, but you're not going to like it. Feels like an incredible one, very apropos. This season, he gave us a really good one when asked about the Acrisure Stadium grass and the field conditions, and his response was, "I don't even know who cuts my grass." And I thought that was an incredible response, and not only did it diffuse the situation, but I downright believed him. Mike Tomlin is just full of incredible quotes for nothing but 19 years. and it's just been an absolute joy.
The other one I'll throw out at you is cut your eyelids off and don't blink. That one, I think that one resonates with his players a lot because I've heard Cam Hayward say that a lot. I've heard
Mhm.
Nick Herbig say it a lot. I've heard a lot of the players repeat that specific Tomlinism. And obviously, as we all know, the standard is really the standard bearer for all Tomlinisms. But I will say he left us with a pretty good one. The last Tomlinism, unless I missed one in his post-game presser on Monday, the last true Tomlinism that we got was about Tyler Loop missing that field goal after the Ravens game, saying, well, what if Tyler Loop would have made the field goal? And he said, well, if Tyler Loop would have made that field goal, I don't know, because what if my aunt had male parts? She'd be my uncle. And I think that is that's a way to close it out there, Mike T. Just a legend through and through.
And then just the director of PR from the Steelers just immediately being like, "We're gonna end it
Thanks,
there,
Mike.
guys."
Just thanks, Mike. All right.
Incredible, one of a kind coach. Great times ahead, tough times ahead. We're all gonna look back with fond memories and bright eyes of the Mike Tomlin era in Pittsburgh.
Yep, there were good times, there were bad times. The one thing you can say without a doubt is, oh, it was a time with Mike Tomlin as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jacob Punturi, thank you again for joining. Like I mentioned, you can find his work at Steelers on SI. Listen to him as the co-host of the All Steelers Talk podcast, or find him on Twitter at Jake_Atsby. Jake, thanks so much for joining.
My man, thank you so much. Appreciate it a bunch.